My son told me I should go to a nursing home, then showed me the papers I signed after my husband's funeral. My son looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mother, perhaps it's time you found a place of your own." I nodded, smiled, and quietly went upstairs to pack my bags. 3 weeks later, I was sipping champagne on a lavish terrace overlooking the glittering Lake Zurich. Meanwhile, back in Vienna, he was frantically calling his lawyer about the foreclosure notice on the house he thought was his. Before I tell you how a 65-year-old widow managed to flip a game that was already decided, let me go back to the beginning, to our house, to Stefan's white rose garden, and to the devastating mistake I made in the depths of my grief. My name is Annelise. This story begins in an old villa on the outskirts of Vienna, a home my husband, Stefan, and I had spent a lifetime building. His greatest love in that house was the white rose garden on the front terrace. He said each bloom was a promise of our love. After he was gone, that garden was the only thing that held a trace of his warmth in this world. Stefan's sudden heart attack robbed me not only of my life partner but also of my reason. It was during those hazy days that when our only son, Leo, said he needed my signature to help you handle the estate paperwork and lighten your burden, I signed without a moment's hesitation. I was grateful to have my son there to manage everything. Some time later, Leo and his wife, Clara, moved in. At first, I was genuinely happy that the house felt less empty. Clara presented herself as the perfect daughter-in-law, always sweet and attentive. She was fascinated by the antiques in our home, constantly asking detailed questions about their origins and value. I thought it was because she cherished the family's heritage. She was also very concerned about my health. Noticing my sadness, she began researching the effects of a quiet life on the elderly. She even told me about the Silver Lake retirement community, a place with fresh air and many activities. At the time, I simply thought she was kind and thoughtful. Lately, I had been feeling more tired. My memory seemed to be failing as well. Clara said it was due to my insomnia and began making me a cup of chamomile tea every night to help me sleep better. It was true. After drinking the tea, I slept very deeply, though I woke up feeling a bit groggy. Sometimes I felt a little dizzy, unsteady on my feet. It must be old age, I thought. Clara also helped me manage everything. She said I shouldn't go out much due to my poor health, so she changed the Wi-Fi password and locked the landline to avoid unnecessary and bothersome calls. Once, when I went to the bank to withdraw some money, I ran into trouble. The teller explained that for security reasons, any large transactions from my account would now require Leo's confirmation. My son is so careful, I thought to myself. I felt my life becoming more and more dependent on them, but I assumed it was natural. I was a widowed old woman, and they were my dutiful children, caring for me. I felt grateful. I had no idea that this care was, in fact, a noose tightening around my neck. I only felt that something was wrong, but I couldn't name it. Until one Sunday morning, when they called me into the living room. And then one Sunday morning they called me into the living room. The air in the room was heavy. I knew this was it, the moment the final curtain would rise. Clara sat bolt upright on the sofa, her fingers laced together in her lap in a posture of complete control. She cleared her throat and began with a practiced smile. "Mother, I know you've been sad lately. Leo and I have been thinking a lot, and we are truly worried about you." She paused, waiting for my response. I remained silent, but in my mind, everything suddenly shattered. In that single moment, I understood everything. The calming tea every night, the subtle comments to the neighbors about my failing memory, the financial isolation. These were not separate actions. They were carefully calculated steps, perfectly linked together. She didn't just want the house. She wanted to prove that I was no longer of sound mind. She wanted to strip me of any right to resist, both legally and mentally. The cold realization sent a shiver down my spine. I had catastrophically underestimated my daughter-in-law's cruelty. Seeing my silence, Clara's smile faded. replaced by a serious expression. She continued, her voice now filled with an authority disguised as compassion. So, we've made a decision. This is for your own good. At the beginning of next month, you will be moving to the Silver Lake retirement community. She spoke fluently, articulately, as if she had rehearsed this speech 100 times. This wasn't an offer, it was an ultimatum. I turned to look at Leo. He was huddled in an armchair, wringing his hands, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Leo?" I called, my voice hoarse. He flinched and looked up, but his eyes avoided mine. "Mother," he mumbled. Clara has researched it thoroughly. It's a very good place. I think it's the right thing to do." "The right thing," I repeated, and this time I couldn't hide the disbelief in my voice. "Are you talking about pushing me out of my own home?" Hearing my resistance, Clara immediately interjected, her voice stripped of all sweetness, leaving only a naked coldness. "Mother, perhaps you don't understand the situation. With the document you signed, Leo is now a co-owner of this house and has full power of attorney over your finances. If you don't cooperate—" "Co-owner?" I stammered, a ringing in my ears. "What document?" "I only signed a power of attorney." In that instant, the fog that had enveloped me for over a year suddenly lifted. I remembered the thick stack of papers Leo had given me after the funeral, his words that it was just to keep things tidy, the nightly tea that left me groggy, the whispers to the neighbours, the financial cut-off. All the disconnected pieces suddenly snapped together into a single, complete picture, a conspiracy so cruel it was almost unbelievable. I looked at my son, Leo, and for the first time, I no longer saw my little boy. I saw a stranger, a man who had callously used his own father's death, who had exploited his mother's grief, to trick me into signing away my home. He hadn't just decided this yesterday. He had been planning this for a very long time. The pain of this betrayal was greater than the pain of losing Stefan. While I was reeling from the brutal truth, Clara continued, glancing at Leo. Prodded by his wife's glare, my son stammered out the final threat. Then I'll be forced to stop paying the bills, to cut off access to your bank accounts. I can't let you keep living here when I don't believe it's safe. You won't have the money to manage." A cold emptiness washed over me. Not anger, but a grief so profound it paralyzed every other emotion. But in the midst of that devastation, something else began to rise. A terrifying calm. I lifted my head, looked straight at the stranger wearing my son's face, and said, my voice clear and without a single tremor, "Very well, I'll go." I saw his shoulders slump with relief. Clara couldn't hide a fleeting, triumphant smirk before schooling her features into a look of sympathy. They thought they had won. They thought I was utterly broken. After they left the living room, leaving me alone in the ghastly silence, I remained motionless in my chair. I did not cry. My tears seemed to have run dry. I felt only a hollowness, a sense of abandonment more painful than the day I lost Stefan. At least when he passed, I still had our memories. Now, even those were about to be taken from me. That night, I didn't sleep. I wandered through my house, our house, like a ghost. I passed through the dining room where we had celebrated Leo's birthdays. I paused at the foot of the stairs where Stefan had carved pencil marks tracking our son's height over the years. Every corner held the fractured pieces of a happy life, a family I once thought was unbreakable. I felt helpless. That document was an invisible chain, binding me completely. What could I do? Argue? Beg? It was all meaningless. In the depths of my despair, my feet unconsciously carried me to the end of the hall, stopping before a door I had not opened in over a year. Stefan's study. I had avoided this place. I was afraid of the emptiness of walking in and not seeing him there. I feared the familiar scent of wood and old paper would make my wounds bleed anew. But tonight, I had nothing left to lose. My only fear now was being cast out from the place that held his spirit. The heavy oak door opened without a sound. Clara never dared to enter. Stefan had once told her it was his design patent archive, and only I had the key. A small lie from him had now become my last safe harbour. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked in the dark, following the familiar path to his large oil portrait on the opposite wall. It was painted for our 20th anniversary. He was smiling, his warm eyes seeming to look right at me. I reached up, my hand touching the smooth walnut frame. My fingers found a small, hidden latch in the upper right corner, a secret mechanism he himself had shown me. I pressed it gently. The portrait slid silently to one side, revealing the cold steel door of a wall safe. I turned the dial. My birthday, our wedding anniversary, and the day we adopted Leo. Click. The safe door swung open. Inside, there was no money or precious jewelry, only a small cedar box. Trembling, I lifted the box out, placed it on his desk, and carefully opened the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of crimson velvet, were a bank safe deposit key and an old leather-bound notebook. I picked up the notebook first. The soft leather cover still held a familiar warmth under my fingers. I opened it to the first page. It was his handwriting, addressed to me. My dearest Annelise, if you are reading this, then what I feared most has happened. Do not be afraid. Take this key to the bank and see Herr Müller, the lawyer. He is the trustee and will know what to do. Trust him and trust me. Tears streamed down my face. He knew. My Stefan had known all along. He wasn't just my husband. He was my protector, even from beyond the grave. The next morning, my own play began. The first week was preparation. Under the pretext of a doctor's appointment, I went to the bank to meet with Herr Müller. In a discreet conference room, he showed me the complete file for the trust Stefan had established 5 years prior. He explained that I was the sole beneficiary, and with evidence of the financial pressure from Leo and Clara, he, as the trustee, had full authority to enact the trust's protective clauses, including the right to sell the property. My first task was to go to a nearby notary's office to sign an identity verification and confirm my request for the trustee to act. I completed it that very afternoon, my heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and hope. The second week was for decisive action. My main role was to provide safe access to the house for the professionals. While I pretended to go for walks or visit retirement homes, a heating system maintenance crew arrived. In reality, it was a team from an old auction house partner of Stefan's, sent to conduct an insurance inventory of the silver collection. They worked quickly and professionally. Clara was completely unsuspecting. She was even pleased, thinking the house would soon be maintained for its new masters, her and Leo. At the end of the week, I went to the notary's office again. This time, it was to sign the document consenting to the trustee's decision. There, Herr Müller, as the trust's legal representative, officially signed the sale of the house to a Herr Klein, a trusted business associate Stefan had arranged everything with in advance. As soon as the contract was notarized and the title transferred, a legal notice demanding the property be vacated within 7 days was sent to our address via certified mail. The time bomb was set. The third week, Judgment Day, arrived. The notice had been delivered 2 days earlier, and I saw Clara toss it into the recycling bin after a cursory glance, assuming it was junk mail. She had no idea. That morning, a car pulled up, but it wasn't a standard moving van. A representative from the notary's office, dressed in a sharp business suit, stepped out, accompanied by Herr Müller. Clara stormed outside, her face a mask of arrogance at the sight of strangers. "Who are you? What do you want?" The notary's representative stepped forward professionally. He presented the new, officially registered title deed and a copy of the handover notice. "Madam, we are here to oversee the transfer of the property to the new owner, Herr Klein, as per the scheduled and notified appointment. This house has been legally sold. Clara's face went white. She stammered, turning to Leo, who had just run out. Sold? Sold to whom? At that moment, I pulled my suitcase down from the top of the stairs. I was ready. I was the one who agreed to sell, I said. You can't, Leo yelled, brandishing the power of attorney document. Herr Müller replied calmly. That document holds no authority over assets that belong to a trust, sir. All our actions are in strict accordance with the will and legal instruments your father established. Clara's calculations crumbled. Leo staggered back, the paper in his hand now looking utterly useless. It was then that I took my final step. I looked my son straight in the eye. This isn't my revenge. This was your father's final test. I paused for a beat, and you both failed spectacularly. With that, I turned my back, pulled my suitcase, and walked straight out that door without a single glance behind me. My war in Vienna was over. My war in Vienna was over. The plane took off, carrying me away from the city that had held my entire life. As I looked down at the familiar rooftops through the window, I felt no regret. I felt an extraordinary sense of release, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time, I was no longer Stefan's wife or Leo's mother. I was simply Annelise, a 5-year-old woman starting over. The feeling was at once overwhelmingly liberating and tinged with a faint anxiety. But above all, it was filled with a powerful hope. I arrived in Zurich, Switzerland. Following the final instructions in the notebook, I found my way to a luxurious private bank in the heart of the city. The manager, a Herr Hess, was expecting me. He greeted me with a respect I hadn't experienced in a long time. Mrs. Annelise, he said after we were seated in a discreet private office. Mr. Stefan was a very special client of ours. Before he passed, he prepared everything for you. He handed me a key in a velvet box and a card with an address. He called it our real home. I followed the address to a modern, elegant building overlooking Lake Zurich. The building manager, who had been notified of my arrival, escorted me to the top floor in a private elevator. When the penthouse door opened, I gasped. The apartment was flooded with light. The interior was exquisitely decorated, warm and inviting, in the exact style Stefan and I had always loved. But what stunned me most was the expansive balcony with a breathtaking view of the turquoise lake and the majestic Alps in the distance. On a glass table in the center of the living room sat a vase of blooming white roses, their fragrance filling the air. Beside it was a small card. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was Stefan's handwriting. Welcome home, my Annelise. I knew you could do it. Now, live the life you deserve. Travel. Paint. Do all the things you ever dreamed of. My love will always be with you, in every breeze that blows across this lake. I burst into tears. They flowed freely, not from sorrow, but from an overwhelming, shattering happiness. Stefan hadn't just left me money. He had prepared an entire new life for me, a fresh start, a true home. He had transformed his love into a safe and eternal sanctuary for me. A few months later, once I had settled into my new life, I received a letter from Leo. He wrote that after being sued by the new owner, Herr Klein, for the cost of repairing damages to the house, Clara had left him. Having lost his home, his wife, and been ostracized by friends as the story got out, he was starting over with a menial job. He didn't ask for my forgiveness, only expressed a deep remorse for what he had done. I folded the letter and placed it next to Stefan's notebook. I didn't rush to reply. He needed time to grow up on his own. I stepped out onto my balcony, where the white roses I had planted myself were beginning to bud. I looked out at the sparkling lake. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was about rebirth. I was the beneficiary and co-executor with the trustee, carrying out Stefan's living legacy. And I, at 65, had finally found my real home, a place where my soul was at peace. Use arrow up and arrow down to select a turn, enter to jump to it, and escape to return to the chat.